Hi, welcome to Seaside Quilting Tutorials. My name is Terry, and today we're going to talk about how to insert a zipper. So if you wanted to add a pocket to a tote bag or a purse that you're making or a garment that you're making, it's pretty much all the same. And I think it's one of the things that really worry people in sewing is, how do I get a zipper in there? And quite often when we get patterns for tote bags, even sometimes purses, we don't get a pattern for how to insert the zipper. So let's go about doing that today. I'm going to be inserting a 7-inch zipper. Zippers are measured from one end of the teeth to the other end of the teeth, not from the end of the tabs. And when you're making your pocket, you want your pocket to be 2 inches wider than your zipper. So my zipper is 7 inches between the end of the teeth and the top of the teeth. So I've made this 9 inches. And then you just want to decide how wide do you want your pocket to be, how deep you want your pocket to be. I decided on about a 4-inch, depth for this one. So 4 inches. So I've cut my piece 9 inches wide and 8 inches long. Then I've also cut my interfacing, and this is, let me see, I'm trying to remember the name of it now. This is Shape Flex fusible interfacing, and I've cut it out the exact same measurement. I'm going to lay it down on the back side of it, like so. Then I'm just going to put a pressing cloth on top of that, making sure not to move my interfacing when I lay it down. And I'm going to spray this pretty good. Get my pressing cloth damp. Got to heat up my iron just a little bit. And then we're going to press this down so that the interfacing stays down. Remember, your interfacing, you want to make sure that the bubble side, you can feel it. It's a little bit rough on the side that's going to stick. You want to have that side down on the back side. Okay, now that my iron's warmed up. And we're just going to leave it there for about 5 seconds at a time in each spot as we move the iron around. It doesn't take too long to do it, but don't iron back and forth because you don't want to move everything around. Just do pressing, lift your iron, move it over and set it down. And you'll see your pressing cloth dry as you're holding it down. And then I'm just going to check it, and that's all well stuck together. Okay, so we're going to take this over to the cutting table and I'll show you how we're going to set this up. Okay, so now we're going to do our markings. We're going to measure an inch down from the top, and I'm going to make a mark on this side. And I'm also going to make a mark that is 3/8 of an inch down from that 1 inch mark. I was just double checking. I always like to double check my measurements. And we'll do the same on the other. Whoops. My sweater's moving everything. So I'm going to do the same on this side. Harder to mark from that side. So on your ruler, I've got my 1 inch here, and I counted 3/8. So 1, 2, 3/8. And that's where I got my 3/8. And then I'm just going to take my ruler, and I'm going to draw a straight line across for that 1 inch. And I'm just using a Frixion pen. It will remove with heat or when you're washing your garment. We're not going to see this anyways because the pocket's going to be on the inside. And then we'll do our marking down 3/8 of an inch down from that mark. So this was 1 inch down. This does have an eraser on the other end. Getting little marks on my table. So this was 1 inch from the top, and then we made another mark 3/8 of an inch from that. And then we're going to take and we're going to make a line that is 1 inch from this edge and 1 inch from this edge. And we'll draw that line straight down. And we'll draw the next line straight down. And then we're going to draw a line that is straight across the middle. And I'm just checking my measurements here so I can get this an even line across the middle. A little off the middle. And these Frixion pens are kind of neat because I can go across and erase my line. And fix that so that I'm at the halfway mark. Keep my line straight. Okay, that's better. So then you're going to go, I'm going to sharpen up my line just a little bit here so that I can see my middle line. And then you're going to go 3/8 diagonal from that corner. And then the same on this side. So we're going to make like a little triangle here. And then we'll do the same on this side and go 3/8. And we'll make our little triangle on this side. Okay, so your piece will look like this. You'll have your top line that was at 1 inch, your second line at 3/8, a center line between those two, and then 3/8 down from here to that middle line, 3/8 from here to there, and you've got your triangles, and you do that on each side. Okay, we're going to bring that over to our sewing machine, and we'll get this going. So this piece is as if this is like our lining inside of our tote bag or our purse or whatever we're trying to insert a zipper into. We're going to take this piece and we're going to fold it in half so we'll be able to find our center. And you can just finger press that down. Just so that we have our center. And then we're going to do the same thing with our pocket. Okay, so we have our center there and we have our center on here. And then you're going to decide where about you want your pocket to be on your piece. So you don't want it too close to the tops because you're going to be having a seam up here when you attach this. But you could have it up here, you can have it here. You just want to make sure that you don't have it down so low that when this gets folded that it ends up way down hanging past your bottom. So keep that in mind as you're deciding where you want to place your pocket. I'm going to place mine right about here, and you're just going to check the bottom to make sure that it's lined up in the center, on that center line, and check your top to make sure that it's centered with your center line. And we're going to go ahead and place some pins in here just to keep this in place as we're working with it. There. And you don't need a lot of pins, but just enough so that this isn't moving when you're trying to get it sewn. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to sew around, but not all the way to the edges. We're just going to sew from here straight over to there, then down our 1 inch line, then across our bottom line, and then once again up here. And we'll pivot on each corner. And I'm just using a straight stitch. My machine is set at woven medium. I'm going to set my stitches at 2.0. I like a little bit smaller stitches in around here. just because it will give it a tighter hold, strengthen it a little bit. Okay. And I'm just going to be following, I'm going to be guiding with that center line on my foot. And I'm just going to be following my line as I go. And I'm going to turn my machine down a little bit so I'm not going too fast while I'm sewing. And I'm going to bring my needle down in that first corner. I had to find my presser foot. I moved that. Okay. So I've got my needle. It's down in the very corner over on this side, like it would be up on that side. And I just made sure that it's in the very corner. And I'm just going to sew this all the way around on that line. And once I'm at the very corner of my triangle, I'm going to make sure my needle is down, and then I'm going to pivot my fabric. And then I'm going to sew up the line until I'm at the next corner. And I'll pivot again, and I'll follow my straight line across. I've got quite a long thread there. Let's cut that. Get that out of my way. And I'm going to get to that next corner. And I'll pivot again. Whoops, one more stitch. And then I'll pivot again. And I'm going to do a fixed stitch there. Now you can either go back and forth, or my machine does it automatically, but you can do the reverse and forward to secure your stitch. And then go ahead and cut your stitch, your thread rather. And I'm going to trim my stitches and my extra thread in the back. I'm going to take those top pins out. Now what we're going to do is we're going to cut from the point of this triangle over to the point of that triangle. And you want some sharp scissors. I've got some handy little gingers. And I'm just going to poke in. Now, if you want, you could start in the center so that you're not too close to your corner. And make sure your fingers are out of the way in the back. Sometimes an easier way is to take your seam ripper and poke your seam ripper in and just let your seam ripper cut it. And then once your seam ripper has made a hole for you, then you can use your scissors and you're going to cut to the very point. Just make sure you don't go past your point. Like that. And while I'm right there, I want to cut on each line of my triangle up to the stitches, but make sure that you don't cut your stitches when you do this cut. So I'm just going to cut here, and I'm going to cut here up to the stitches, but I don't want to cut into my stitches. So you're going to get just as close as you can without cutting your stitches. And you'll do that on each side of your triangle. And just don't cut into your stitches. And so this will, oh, I need to get a little bit closer up there. There we go. And so you have like almost like a little flap there. There's a little bit more on your side. So you'll see that this will fold back and forth. And then we'll do the other side. In case I didn't get that in the camera, I'm just going to double show that. So I've cut up to the corner and up to the corner without cutting into my stitches, and this will kind of flap back and forth. So now I'm going to trim this side, cut straight across that line all the way to the point. I'm trying to be a little louder when I talk because my voice doesn't always pick up. Okay, so once again we're at the point right here. We're going to cut up and up without cutting into our stitches. And you want to get as close as you can up to that corner, but you don't want to cut into your stitching, because then it will come apart too easy. And once again, we got a little flap right there. Okay? So now, before we turn this, we're going to fold our pocket down like so, and we're going to finger press across. And you're just getting it on that line that you stitched previously on the top. And you're just going to finger press that across. And now what we're going to do, without getting this piece in the way, because you can see how now it opens up, we don't want to sew onto this piece. We're going to sew approximately from here over to here. And this is our understitching. So I'm just going to fold this a little bit better with my fingers, making sure that I got a nice fold there. And I'm going to put this under my machine, and I'm going to sew. You can see if you fold this back where you stopped sewing on that line right there. We'll sew right about from that corner over. Oops, I gotta put it like this, because we're stitching sort of right under that other stitch. So just line your line up. You just check over here, and you're going to want to make sure that you pull down a little bit on this side, because you don't want to end up sewing. You don't have to have it down a lot, but you just want to make sure that you're not sewing this onto this piece. So I can see that my line is right here, and I can even take my chalk and make a little line for myself so that I remember where I'm sewing from, and I can see up on this side, if I fold this over, where I am on this side, just as a guide. And I'm just going to be barely stitching below my other stitching. Just making sure my thread was in there. So it's kind of close. Right underneath where I had stitched it before. And you can kind of feel where it is. There, just checking to make sure I have that out of the way so I'm not sewing on top of it. And if your line isn't perfectly straight, that's fine, because this is going to be on the inside of your bag. Okay, so we have that folded. Now, let me see. I've got to take my other pins out. And then I'm going to fold this side up, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to fold across with my finger, press it down. I'll take my chalk and I'll make my little marks so I know where I'm sewing from. And once again, you can feel where your fold is. We're going to be sewing just below that fold. And we want to make sure, once again, that we're keeping this piece up out of the way so we're not sewing onto it. And I'm sewing just below that line, or just below that fold rather. Just checking to make sure I'm still got my other piece out of the way. And I'll sew over to my mark. And you want to secure each side. I forgot to mention that when I was on the other side. I'm sorry. There we go. And cut that. So now just trim your threads. And you'll poke this to the inside. So now I'm going to take this and I'm going to press this. Just got to wait for my iron to heat up a little bit. And you're going to fold this. I like to finger press it right where I stitched. All the way around. Because at first it's going to feel like it wants to go down further on you. And you want it right up to where you stitched it. Otherwise it's going to pucker on the sides. So you just have to manipulate it a little bit to get it right where you want it. I'm just going to finger press this corner as well. That's where that little flap is right there. And it does, when you first go to do it, it almost feels like it wants to be down here. And if I was to do that, then this is going to fold over. You want it right where your understitching was when you press it. So I've got that flap up there. And actually I'm going to check it from this side. It's a little bit easier, I think, if you press it from the back side. Now that I've done my finger pressing. Now I'll press that in place. And I'm just going to turn it around on this side. And I'm going to press it just a little bit more in this corner where it's trying to pucker on me. There. So now you're going to take your zipper and you're going to set it up underneath. Oh wait, one more step. We don't want to forget this next step. This is important. So we're going to take our zipper and you're just going to kind of push your pieces together and just little ways from the end, because you don't want to end up sewing on your end here, but you want to sew a little bit away from it. And we're going to sew back and forth, 4 or 5 times so that we can secure that end. Just trim your extra threads off. And see, that just holds it together. Oh, get that in the camera. So that just holds it together there. And we're going to do the same up here. We're just going to open our zipper up just a little bit. And we're going to put the 2 tops of the teeth. We're going to hold those together, and we're just going to kind of hold this together, and we're going to go just a little bit above where the top of the teeth come together when you would zip it up. And just hold it together. Keep your fingers out of the way of your needle. Whoops, that was in reverse. just go back and forth 4 or 5 times. And that just helps secure that end. And trim your extra threads off. Okay. So now you'll take your piece, and we've got our nice opening on there. I'm going to turn this iron off. So I don't forget. Okay, so you're going to lay your zipper under here, like so. And you're going to get it lined up. Inside here so that it's somewhat even. And once you get it so that you can see that it's even, you got the top of your zipper over here. It looks pretty equal on both sides. I'm just going to take some pins and I'm going to place just enough pins so that I feel like I'm being able to keep it straight on here while I'm sewing it. So it's not moving on me. Move this zipper down, this pin down just a little bit. Okay, so I got some pins there. I'm going to put some pins down here as well to hold that into place for me. And I'm only going to put a couple here because I'm going to start sewing up here. And I'm going to switch over to my zipper foot. Now your zipper foot might look different than my zipper foot. Now I'm going to open my zipper just a little bit since I have it all pinned in. Now you could use a straight stitch foot. You're just going to be stitching somewhat close to the teeth, but not on the teeth, like right next to them. And I'm going to sew down until I'm almost to the zipper, and then so I can be able to pull my zipper back up out of the way. Once I'm past where the zipper would be, I'm just going to zip that back up and get my zipper out of my way. And you're just going to be sewing close, making sure that you're getting this part attached to your zipper. It doesn't have to be a perfect straight line. You're just going to be getting it close to the zipper along the edge. And when I pivot this around, you'll be able to see a little bit better. And you'll take your pins out as you go. Now when you get down to this bottom, just feel with your finger where that little metal piece at the end of your zipper is. We don't want to sew over that metal piece. We want to go past that when we sew. And make sure that we're going to be past it with our needle, because you don't want your needle to hit that metal piece. And then we're going to pivot and we're going to sew up a little bit. I'm going to take this pin out and I'm going to sew across there, that bottom. And I'll just check that I'm going to be landing where I want to, close to the teeth. It doesn't have to be like absolutely up against the teeth, just a little bit close. And I want to make sure that my needle isn't going to be hitting. I'm going to take one more stitch. just to make sure that I'm not going to hit that metal piece right down here, your stopper on your zipper, because you don't want to hit that stopper. Then that will break your needle. And we're going to continue to sew up this side. And if your line isn't perfectly straight, that's fine. I've used a white thread so you'll be able to see my stitching, but normally you would use a coordinating thread. And I'm going to take that last pin out, and I'm going to open my zipper back up past where I'm going to be sewing. And I'm going to get up just a little bit past where that zipper is going to come up to here. And I'm going to sew down here and then meet back up. And I'll secure my stitching here. Just one or two back and forth, reverse and forward. We'll do it. Okay, so now our zipper is in place. We're just going to trim any extra threads around here. We don't want those getting stuck inside of our zipper. Okay. So now our zipper is in. We'll just pull that back over there. So now for the next step, we're going to finish off our pocket. So to finish up our pocket, we're just going to fold our pocket up. I'm going to put a pin over in this side, but I'm going to lift it up. And I'm going to kind of make sure that I got this going across so the ends are meeting up. And I'm just going to put a couple pins in the bottom of the pocket out of the way, just to hold my pocket so it's folded. And so we're going to stitch 1/4 of an inch up through here, across here, and back down. We don't need to do the bottom because it's already folded. Okay? And when we do this, we're going to fold this side out of the way so that we're only sewing the pocket. We don't want to sew the pocket to the lining that it's going into. So we're going to sew across here. When we get here, we're going to fold that down out of the way. And actually, I'm going to put a little pin over here to make sure that this stays lined up. And then when we get to the back side, this last side, we'll fold this side down out of the way, because you want to make sure that you're not sewing your pocket to your lining. So we're going to start over on this side. I've got my fabric, my lining fabric here out of my way. Oops. I got to take that out. Put my regular foot back in. I accidentally unthreaded my machine. And I'm going to put this back into my regular stitches. So I'm doing a straight stitch. Okay. So like I said, I'm just going to, oh, got a little bit of fluff. A little bit of lint. That's no good. All right, let me rethread this again. Okay, so I'm just going to follow 1/4 of an inch Make sure that your fabric's up underneath your needle. And I'm going to make sure my needle's down for one thing. And then I'm going to do a reverse stitch here, almost to the very bottom. Because you don't want a hole there. You don't want stuff escaping out of your pocket. So all the way down to the fold. You'll reverse it and then come back up and just follow your 1/4 of an inch. Until you get up to that corner and just stop a 1/4 of an inch before. And you can check it. Make sure you're out of a 1/4 of an inch. And then you're going to fold this fabric underneath so it's out of your way again. And I'm going to sew all the way across a 1/4 of an inch until I get to a 1/4 of an inch away from the end. Take that pin out of my way. And I'll check it. I need a couple more stitches and then I'll be at a 1/4 of an inch. Oh, one might do it. No, not quite. One more. Okay, so now I'm going to fold this fabric underneath, out of the way from this side. And I'm going to sew all the way to that fold. And when you get to the fold, you'll do a reverse. And I want to make sure I get all the way past that fold, you know, all the way down to the bottom of it. Because you don't want a little hole there where stuff's going to be sneaking out. Although it's tiny, you don't want stuff coming out of your pocket. And I'm going to go back one more time and cut my thread. And you might do a couple practice if you have like some old zippers around or some small zippers around. Zippers aren't too much. You could even, you know, put one in and seam rip the fabric off of it and practice again. But it's good to practice 1 or 2 times if you're not feeling comfortable with it. This is, you know, we're just building skills as we go along, learning as we go. Don't be afraid of it. My stitching isn't exactly perfect. It's close enough. My zipper is in. If that was coordinating fabric, you wouldn't even know if my stitching was off or not. This is going to be the inside of a tote bag or the inside of a purse, inside of a, you know, maybe a jacket or whatever. And when you open your zipper up, you can see that we've got our cute little pocket in there. The pocket could have been deeper. I was just doing a shorter one to show you how the pocket works. So we've got our nice little pocket in there. It's all stabilized with the interfacing, so it's nice and strong in there. And then you've got a nice little pocket in there that you can put stuff in. And I think that's handy in a tote bag, especially in a purse. I hate to have a purse that doesn't have, you know, a little place that I can put some things in, you know, nail clippers, whatever that I need to take around with me. And then you zip it back up, and it's all enclosed on the back. And then you would just go about your regular instructions, however you would be putting this together, whether it's a tote bag or a purse. You would just continue to follow your regular directions. This is just an addition in case you want to add a zipper in. So I hope that this tutorial has been helpful for you today. If it has been helpful, please take a moment and like the video, subscribe to Seaside Quilting Supplies, and next to that you'll see a little bell. And on that little bell, if you click on it, you can change the notifications. So if you set it to all each time that we put a new tutorial up, you'll get notified that there's a new tutorial available to see. Okay, you have a great day. This was Seaside Quilting Tutorials. My name is Terry. Happy sewing.